Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for being here on our first Tuesday show. It's good seeing you all here. I want to talk about gun control and, well, what the Supreme Court is working on because there's two sides actually happening right now. On one side, with the thing that's making the most noise, actually, you have Republicans who have sided with the Democrats to get through the filibuster, and they're planning to pass some gun control laws, including red flag laws. I'm going to go into that and what that means and some of the broader implications of it because laws in writing tend to be different from laws in practice these days. And if they can seize your guns on the grounds of you're a threat or you're an extremist or something like that, all they have to do is alter the definition of a threat or the definition of an extremist to make this into basically a gun grab law. The other side of it is, the Democrats are not going to be appeased with the tiny bits. I mean, pretty significant loss for people who support gun rights. But Democrats are not going to be satisfied with that. They're going to keep trying to push it. This is in no way an end. And so it appeases nobody in reality. I'll be explaining this and what that means, but also the Supreme Court right now is getting ready to rule on some really key gun control legislation, which could actually make it so that even in New York City, very soon you might be able to have a concealed carry. So you actually have two sides of this, and the other side of it, the Supreme Court side, no one seems to be talking about. Also, folks, the FBI is saying that violence will not be tolerated if and when, very likely, the Supreme Court makes its ruling on Roe versus Wade, abortion. But at the same time, you have these groups, these protest groups, including the ones protesting at the homes of justices, saying they're not going to write off the use of violence. And I'll be explaining some of the issues you have with that, including some of the hypocrisy. And also, folks, authorities are now flirting with the idea of monkeypox restrictions. It seems that monkeypox may be the next COVID, in terms of policy at least, not in terms of infections, depending on how you view it. And also, I'm going to talk about how they're trying to sweep under the rug some of the real news about monkeypox and, frankly, how it's spreading, because nobody wants to mention that it seems to be, it is mostly being transmitted among gay men. And even some of the main authorities on this, while they acknowledge this fact, they don't want to, they're trying to downplay it. And this is one of the issues you have of politics over science, where science has become basically beholden to political narratives, and people could get sick because of it. Let's put it that way. All right, that said, let's jump into the first stories for the day. Briefly as well, those of you on YouTube or Rumble, we'll do about 20 minutes on these platforms, then we'll jump exclusively to Epic TV. We do an hour and a half show total. So if you don't have one yet, get your subscription to Epic TV. There's a link in the description below. Sorry, get your subscription. Link in the description below. We have a Father's Day special, 50% off. Or if you're a subscriber already, want to get your dad or grandpa an account, jump in the description, get your free trial, get your discount. We'll see you on Epic TV after that. All right, that said, let's talk about what's happening with, gun control. So first story here, this is Epic Times. And this is the big thing with this. Now, first of all, I'll talk about what's happening with Congress and Biden. So first of all, Biden right now is urging Congress to pass the gun bill that 10 Republicans have, sided with Democrats on, and they're going to be passing. Now, it says this, the measure, which is backed by 10 Republicans in the Senate. Now, remember, the Democrats can get through a lot of stuff in the House. The Senate tends to be where they get blocked because, there's a 50-50 split, essentially, and they can't do much. Now, because they got 10 Republicans in the Senate, basically, this would eliminate any kind of blockages on this. And what they're talking about doing is making it so you can't have straw purchases of firearms, so people can't, if a friend buys one, they might not be able to sell it to you as easily, which could also impact things like gun shows and things like that. They're going to fund mental health resources for families and children, which is an interesting move on gun control, and we'll see how that plays out, because sometimes they talk about mental health and things like this. There's a lot more to it. We don't know the details on this yet. They're also talking about enhancing protections of domestic violence victims, making it so that if you've been accused of domestic violence or your partner has a restraining order on you, that could also be applied to making it so you can't own a firearm. They're also looking to increase funding for school safety and there's initiatives around mental health. But notably, it says here the framework bill includes a so-called red flag provision. And this, above anything else, is the one getting the most attention right now. Now, this allows for resources to states and tribes to create and administer laws that help ensure deadly weapons are kept out of the hands of individuals whom a court has determined to be a significant danger to themselves or others, according to a news release on Sunday. Now, I'll go into red flag laws because the wording of this is what's important here, right? They're saying they're going to provide resources to states and tribes to create and administer laws that help ensure deadly weapons are kept out of the hands of individuals whom a court has determined to be a significant danger to themselves or others. Now, if it's left to a court to make a determination on whether you're a danger to yourselves or others, now, normally, the way red flag laws are currently applied is if you're making death threats or if you're threatening suicide or you're threatening to harm other people, then they could, they could actually send the police court order and they could seize your firearms. This is in fact a gun grab legislation for people deemed a threat. So, one of the applications of this would be like with the Uvalde shooter, where he was going on social media and making death threats and saying he was going to, shoot up the school and things like that. Or, for example, if he was brandishing a firearm, there were reports of him having done that. That would be justifiable cause to, of course, seize his guns. I think, honestly, on that level, a lot of people would agree with it. The problem is how you interpret how a court would determine whether you're a threat. Because as we're seeing now, the court's determination on what constitutes a threat is becoming a lot more loose. We see, for example, in Washington, D.C., where people who went and peacefully protested, for the most part, on January 6th are being treated like insurrectionists. If you joined a peaceful protest that's on the conservative side, would you then be deemed a threat? Would you then be deemed an extremist? Well, some courts, I would say, would definitely think so. One thing we've seen, for example, in the January 6 hearings is that some of the judges are even asking some of the people standing trial to renounce their belief that the election in 2020 was stolen. If they believe that, they're being asked by the judge to renounce that belief. Now, I'd say there's significant evidence the election was, in fact, stolen in 2020, but you can't have that opinion under some courts. Now, could this then be applied to individuals who, believe in the evidence, and there's significant evidence that the election was stolen? Could that then deem you a threat? This is where you get into the real kind of weeds of the red flag laws. The other big thing is what constitutes extremism. We've seen, for example, even Department of Defense documents even calling evangelical Christians extremists. In fact, they put evangelical Christians in some of their training documents. The military retracted these after it got exposed, but they were even putting evangelical Christians right alongside like the KKK, and they were calling it an extremist group. So if you're a Christian, for example, would a judge then take that as justification to seize your firearms? According to some current, government level documentation, yes, they could deem that extremism. Now, will that happen? Probably not immediately. But the problem is, once they pass the law, they can make amendments to it, and the issue is then in interpretation. One of the big things we're seeing right now as well with laws like this is that one thing we see, for example, is they can create a law that maybe outlaws a certain type of, let's say, racism. And then you and I would interpret racism as like discrimination based on color of skin or national origin. But if they then alter the definition of racism, which they have been doing, which is now, socioeconomic systems that result in unequal outcomes, i.e., anything that's not equity, or i.e., anything that's not socialism, they call that racism. That is the current dictionary definition because they alter the definition. If you have written law and then you go and alter the definitions of words, you can change the law. And this is one of the other big things we're seeing right now. And so this is really one of the big issues I see with red flag laws is interpretation, implementation, and language. generally I'm pretty pro Second Amendment personally, but of course, it's good. It's good to look at both sides, right? Now, on this note, I would add as well. So let me go over what Biden is saying. This Biden said, according to the Epoch Times, he said the bill does not do everything that I think is needed. And this is the other important part. Let me go into this more. Biden says he doesn't think it does. The bill, the one Republicans and Democrats agreed on, does not do everything that I think is needed on gun control, but it reflects important steps in the right direction and would be the most significant gun safety legislation to pass Congress in decades. Now, this really highlights one of the other big issues with this, which is that the gun grab lobby is not going to be satisfied with this. The Republicans, these 10 Republicans who sided with the Democrats, are doing so believing that they're coming to an agreement that's somehow going to, bring the two sides together and finally find a resolution. Republicans are, surrendering ground on this for the most part. Democrats are not going to be satisfied with that. I can guarantee you that the next time there's any kind of shooting, and there's, we're a big country with a lot of people, and there's shootings all the time in Chicago and elsewhere, but anytime they want to politicize one of these shootings, they can very easily take that and run with it, and very likely they will, and they're going to be pushing for the next things Biden wants, because even as Biden notes, the bill does not do everything that he thinks is needed. And you can look at what most Democrats are saying right now, and they're also not satisfied with it. Republicans are giving ground without having any kind of end in sight on the Democrat side. This is in no way whatsoever going to, satiate the gun grab lobby. Again, this is your classic socialist dialectics. It's just the progressive stance. You give an inch, they'll take a yard. They'll take the things that have been passed, they'll expand on them, they'll alter the interpretations, they'll amend the laws to make them more broad, and then they'll pass additional laws because they'll find that the current laws also don't fix the problems they believe they're going to fix. Let me show you how far I believe this may go. Because you can look at the United Kingdom, where they've already taken everybody's guns, and you still have violent crimes. Because again, when you have a murder, when you have a violent crime, there's two things you usually look at. You look at the intent and you look at the tool. Banning the tool does not get rid of the intent. And we can see that in the UK, well, the intent is still there, but the tool has changed. The tool now is knives. And they're having a problem where instead of going after guns, they're going after knives. Let me show you a photo of what this means, right? Let me pull up this Fox story. People were laughing about this. Now, this is a photo from the police of a dangerous knife collection that they seized from people. You can see that these were seized by police from people. Now, most of these are kitchen knives, like the kind of stuff most of you, I'd imagine, would have in your kitchen. One of them is like an antique rapier. There's also a spoon there. So they literally seized a spoon from somebody. Next to the spoon looks like it's a knife sharpener. This is where it's at in the UK. They've already seized the guns. Now they're going after the knives because, again, intent and tool. Intent remains, tool changes, and they're going to keep seizing the tools. Let me show you another one. That's just one report. That was in 2019. This one's 2020. Daily Mail. Police seize 11,000 knives and some guns and weapons off the streets in a year as stop and search reached 7-year high, leading to 73,000 arrests, including scooter rider caught yesterday with a foot-long Rambo blade. Now, when I was like a teenager, I had like foot-long Rambo blades. You can buy these at like military surplus stores or hunting stores in America. But in the UK, this is considered like a criminal instrument. Instead of assault weapons, it's hunting knives. That's how the narrative shifts. Let me read you some of this. It says, police seized 11,000 knives, firearms, and other weapons off the streets of England and Wales in 1 year as stop and searches reached a 7-year high. The Home Office said there were 558,000, that's 500,000 in a small country, stop and searches carried out in the year to March between the beginning of the year and March under Section 1 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, fitting year. Usage of the powers allowing police to search people and vehicles for items such as drugs and weapons without a warrant led to 73,423 arrests, 13% of those who they searched. So They searched 500,000 people. Roughly 1 out of 10 of those are saying, I'm going to go into this a bit more. First of all, though, folks, we do have a sponsor today. Our episode is brought to you by Secure. Now, over 155 million Americans were affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the past year. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data or online activity. But now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secur. That gives privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland. That's important because Switzerland has some of the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Also, it doesn't rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act. Now, Secure does not ask for your phone number, it does not mine your data or upload your contacts. It functions by adding people you know, then adding their secure numbers. And you can still chat with non-secure users by sending them an invite. Secure protects you from hackers getting onto your phone, and you have privacy while on the app. Now, it's only $5 for the messenger or $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or you can use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring today's episode. Now, those of you curious, the tea today is a ginseng tea. Now, let me go deeper into this because, again, now Republicans have given some ground. They're siding with the Democrats to pass, again, some gun control laws, one of them being the red flag laws, which could really go a long way in terms of let's say, alterations or interpretations that could make this into a pretty strong gun grab law. You already have some examples where people are, using the narrative of, frankly, just being conservative as being, suggesting you're an extremist, or maybe you're a Trump supporter and they call you an extremist. Already, some people do interpret it like that. Would that constitute a reason to seize your firearms? Well, some judges may think so. That is one of the big concerns with it. Now, on this note, some of the Republicans now are criticizing their fellow Republicans who sided with the Democrats on this. Let me show you some of this. This is Matt Gaetz criticizing this. I'll show you a video of him talking about this.
Let the message from this committee hearing to Republican senators be astonishingly clear. If you back red flag laws as some reflexive response to some emotion that you have, you betray your voters. You are a traitor to the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. You do nothing to make mass shootings less likely. And you put a target on the back of your constituents to be subject to bizarre proceedings that you wouldn't see in any other type of circumstance that has a profound impact on your rights. And these will be abused. They are being abused.
Now, on that note, another thing you've seen as well is that, well, frankly, laws like this don't solve the issues of mass shootings. And mass shootings are really defined pretty broadly as any shooting that involves, 2 or more people, including, for example, a murder-suicide. You still have plenty of these in many parts of the world. In fact, some of the countries with the strictest gun control laws in the world have pretty big problems with this, like a lot of countries in Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, and so on. Countries that, again, they for some reason try to suggest they're getting their guns from America. That's not true. A lot of them come from Norinco, which is a Chinese company. The analysis, for example, that in Mexico the drug cartels get most of their guns from America is a lie. That's an analysis based on one weapons cache many, many years ago. Data shows that really a lot of their guns are coming from China's Norinco. In fact, they even have a lot of smuggling operations for that. The other big thing, too, is, one of the other big narratives you've seen is people saying, well, why don't other countries have the problem of mass shootings? They have problems of mass shootings. In Europe, they call it terrorism, where people, for example, in France might pull out an AK and go, shoot up people, or go into a club and, horrifying stories, torturing and killing people. They might drive rent a big truck and drive it through a parade. They've done this. In China, for example, you have mass school violence where people get knives and go into kindergartens. This has happened. And so I'd say, it's really a lot of ignorance on the realities of the world feeding these kinds of narratives. And then you have countries where good people don't have guns, and 10 guys in pickup trucks can basically take over a whole country, like we saw with ISIS, like we see with some of the terrorist groups you have in Africa, the Janjaweed, other things like that. Unarmed populations are not difficult to conquer. Typically, you see this in many parts of the world. Let me go a bit more into this. We'll jump over to Epic TV exclusively in just a minute. Folks, I want to talk about a few more things. I really want to go into the gun grab laws and also what the Supreme Court is doing, because what the Supreme Court is doing is actually, I think, one of the bigger issues right now that hardly anybody is talking about. Because right now the Supreme Court is preparing to rule on some really significant gun laws. And the rulings on this could even mean that in New York City, which has some of the tightest gun control laws like in the entire United States, probably some of the tightest in the world actually, you might be able to have a concealed carry pretty soon. So this is just one part of what the Supreme Court is doing. There's a lot of other stuff. First, though, let me show you a quick trailer, folks. This is Epic TV. Dr. Peter Mercola, John Leake talking about the Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J vaccines, saying they should be immediately pulled off the market. This is our show, American Thought Leaders. Let me show you this.
The suppression of early treatment is total in favor of the vaccines, I think, because there is a psychological program in the minds of people that they are going to be saved by this vaccine. The propaganda has worked that they're going to be saved by the vaccines, but they recognize the vaccines are fallible, that they really don't work unless every single person takes them.
Today I sit down with Dr. Peter McCullough, a leading expert on COVID-19 treatment, and author John Leake, co-authors of The Courage to Face COVID-19, Preventing Hospitalization and Death While Battling the Biopharmaceutical Complex. Why is much of the world's public health apparatus fixated on mass vaccination? Even now, is monkeypox really a threat, or is something else going on?
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
Yeah, wild stuff, huh? The whole thing around, the vaccines won't start working somehow until everybody is vaccinated. such a bizarre jump in logic, right? If the vaccines protected you, you wouldn't have to have everybody. You wouldn't have to have the unvaccinated protected to make sure you're protected, right? It reminds me of communism, where a lot of communists say communism won't start working until everybody practices it. Anyways, folks, join us on Epic TV. I'm going to jump over there now. We're going to go more into what's happening with guns. Then we're going to go into monkeypox. We're going to go into a few other issues. Join us there now. Again, we're giving you a free 14-day trial. Go into the description below if you want a full subscription. 50% off sale for Father's Day. Come join us. Long discussion ahead. See you there. All right, folks. Thank you for being here. I want to go a bit more into what's happening with gun control and, well,